Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Today we have another mouthpiece review for you. This time our mouthpieces are coming all the way from Vienna, Austria. We are trying out Gleichweit mouthpieces. Now, the Viennese Clarinet tradition is unique and storied. When we talk about the different schools of clarinet playing, whether it be French or German or English or American, we can't forget about Viennese. For reference, I personally like this article on Bachtrack.com that features Andreas Ottensamer talking a little bit about the Viennese tradition. In it, he describes the Viennese instrument system in the following way. The Viennese system is similar to the German one, but it has a wider bore, so this results in a darker sound with a full body to it, and always this roundness of playing. Of course, different performers have different tastes, so this may not always be true, but it's a good place to start. And so of course that brings us to today's clarinet mouthpiece review. Let's take a look at the Viennese clarinet tradition through the eyes of Gleichweit mouthpieces. Now, a quick shout out. The origin of this video harkens back about 7 months to a YouTube comment left on the Verdi Traviata mouthpiece review I did. In it, Fernando Herrera commented that now that I had tried a super wide open mouthpiece, I should try the opposite, a Viennese style mouthpiece with a super long facing and a very, very small tip opening. He let me know that I should try the Daniel Ottensamer mouthpiece produced by Gleichweit. I was intrigued by the idea and decided to shelve it for a future video. And of course, the future is now. So I reached out to Gleichweit and I inquired about this Daniel Ottensamer mouthpiece. A day or two later, I received a very nice email from Amir Radicevic, and he let me know and explained to me that the Daniel Ottensamer mouthpiece really is intended for Austrian and German instruments, and it really wouldn't work that well on my French system instrument. I would have intonation problems. He did, however, suggest that he sent me some of their more standard French mouthpieces. He later assured me that the founder of the company, Johannes's idea as a German Viennese clarinetist was to make a French mouthpiece that was true to the Viennese style, that was capable of recreating these sounds. In the end, I received 3 French system mouthpieces from them. So with that all being said, let's jump right into the review. Okay, so I know I've talked a lot already, so I'll make my specs discussion really brief. The 3 models I received were the 7-1, the 7-4, and the 8-4. You can find their tip openings and facings listed on the screen. You can see that they are all on the more open side of things, with relatively long facing lengths by French mouthpiece standards. They were selected and sent after I mentioned that I had most recently played on the Buffet Tosca model mouthpiece from Clarinet. The mouthpieces themselves feature medium to medium thick rails, but aren't the thickest I've ever seen. The mouthpieces also feature O-rings in place of traditional cork on the tenon. This is actually a concept that Johannes came up with in 2003/2004 and has more recently become popular with other manufacturers around the world. Now, judging by the faint lines that can be seen running down the middle of each mouthpiece, they appear to be molded from a special mix of plastic. Yes, you heard me right, plastic. Now, I know in the States that from a pretty early age we've been taught that plastic mouthpieces are cheaply made and primarily for beginners, but let me assure you that these are no student-level mouthpieces. But don't take my word for it, let's hear how they sound. So in the following clips, you will hear the opening to the Schumann Fantasie-Stück 3 different times, once on each of the separate mouthpieces so that you can hear how they differ in sound, followed by an articulation excerpt and an intonation test on my favorite of the 3 mouthpieces. After that, I'll give you my overall impressions. Alright, so I know you all can already tell from the video that the 7-1 was my favorite of the three mouthpieces because I played the articulation excerpt and intonation test on it, but I'm curious. Let me know down in the comments below which of the three was your favorite. Now, going into it a little bit more, I use the exact same 3.5 strength reed on all of the mouthpieces. Now, among the three, the 7-1 was the most comfortable for me. I never had any trouble producing a beautiful, effortless sound. The 7-4 and 8-4 played well as well, but there was just a little bit more resistance in each. I think a large part of this is due to the tip opening just becoming a little bit larger in each successive model. And going back to reeds for a second, I primarily tested these models with either Van Doren V12s or Diodario Reserve Classic Strength 3.5 and both. Both of them worked very well. They're great places to start, so ultimately it just comes down to your own individual brand preference. I would of course have liked to have tested a wider range of styles of reeds on these mouthpieces, but the cost of that adds up very quickly. I do, however, think I found a solution to this problem, so expect an announcement in future videos. Speaking of new videos, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on the Gleichweit hard rubber barrel review that I will be doing later this week. These just came out and I'm really excited to review them. Now, as you heard from the playing portion of the review, all the mouthpieces share a very similar sound. Keeping up with the Viennese tradition, they all produce a very round sound. The sound never becomes bright or edgy as you shift registers or increase in dynamic. That being said, I preferred the sound I got from the 7-1 the most. While it is what I would classify as a darker mouthpiece, its round sound always carried with it an incredible sense of clarity and purity. While there may have been some wind in the sound at times, this seems par for the course for some Viennese players. You can hear it come through in a lot of Andreas and Daniel Ottensamer's recordings. And to be honest, at times this feels like an extra musical tool. The opportunity to show increasing intensity as the music both gets louder and becomes more intense itself. That being said, the 7-4 in the comparison adds a little more wind sound, and 8-4 adds even more than that. I'm pretty sure that the majority of this added sound is just the tip opening increasing. However, both were just a little more diffuse than I would have liked while maintaining that same 3.5 strength reed. Moving on, I will be talking specifically about my experience with the 7-1 as that was my personal favorite. The articulation and response for this mouthpiece was excellent. It responded effortlessly and was capable of rapid articulation across registers. And in general, the articulation maintained a nice roundness while bouncing between those different registers. The dynamic range on this mouthpiece was also excellent. It was capable of playing very easily at the softest pianissimos without losing its quality of sound or clarity, and the same is true with its fortissimos. And finally, intonation. Now, at this point in the recording process, my embouchure was starting to get a little tired, but I still had no problem immediately adapting to the different tendencies this mouthpiece has. As you can see, it clearly tunes very, very well. So ultimately, how do these mouthpieces compare to their competitors, and do I have any complaints? Well, to start, for those looking to get closer to a Viennese style sound without switching instrument systems, this is a good option. To me, it also maintains its own signature sound compared to direct Austrian competitors like Clarinet. I would classify the Clarinet as being ever so slightly darker, while the Gleichweit maintains a certain lightness and clarity. They are both trying for similar concepts while maintaining their individual voices. And if I had to offer any complaints, it would only be about their current naming system. Now, I really appreciate that they offer such a wide variety of facings. However, the naming system gets very confusing very quickly. For instance, let's take a look at the B8 line. The standard B8 has a 21mm facing length and a 1.19 tip opening. The B8-2 has a 28mm facing length and a 1.19 tip opening. The B8-3 has a 20mm facing length and a 1.20 opening. The B8-4 has a 22mm facing length and a 1.19 opening. The B8-5 has the same facing and tip opening as the B8-3. I am positive that internally this system makes perfect sense and is not confusing at all. But from an outside perspective, I can't quite find the pattern to these numbers, and so it becomes confusing very, very quickly. I think what I would like to see them do is over time switch to the system they have in place with their Viennese line, where the mouthpieces are named after the artists that prefer them. For example, you have the Daniel Ottensamer model, the DO, or the WF Wenzel Fuchs model. I realize that for obvious reasons this may not be possible at this particular point in time, but maybe they can consider it a kind of long-term goal for the future, or at least a system similar to that. I just don't want to see the excellent product they're producing inhibited by the naming convention. Alright, so that just about wraps it up for this review. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you liked this video, please don't forget to like it and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more content like this. Also, don't forget to go check out my Instagram page. I have additional recordings with these mouthpieces on there. I'm usually pretty good about marking which mouthpiece is on which video, so you'll be able to get some additional audio excerpts. As always, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask them down in the comments below. I'll do my best to answer them. And until next time, happy practicing.